Welcome to the Future of Less Work, where we're piecing together the transformation of work one conversation at a time. I'm Nirit Cohen, and today we're talking about the training gap. If skills are the new currency, why are so many organizations failing to invest in training and reskilling? A new report from Absorb Software reveals that while over 40% of organizations offer skills training for new hires, less than 10% continue to offer skills when business needs change. In other words, we're onboarding people for jobs they're hired to do, but leaving them unequipped for the ones they'll need to grow into. That doesn't make sense. So what's holding companies back? Where is L&D falling short? And what does smarter upskilling actually look like in a world shaped by AI, shifting careers, and shrinking skills shelf life? To go behind the data, I'm joined today by Leslie Kelley, Chief Growth Officer at Absorb Software. Together, we'll unpack what's broken, what's working, and what's next in the evolution of upskilling. Leslie, welcome to Future Less Work.
Thank you for having me, Nirit. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I was really interested in all that data that we'll unpack here as we go along here. But let's start with that gap. It almost doesn't make sense to me. Why would companies recognize the importance of skilling in this age, right, but not deliver beyond onboarding?
Yeah, I think upskilling really isn't a new topic, right? These are things that we've been talking about for 20 some odd years, and this was something that's been very important for organizations to get behind. I think what's happened in the last few years is it's some of the new technology has allowed us to actually make this something that's a reality. So the days of trying to create a skill ontology and keep it updated every 6 months and put it in a system and match it to job roles, that was a very manual process. So a few years ago, it became really exciting that we could actually use AI to be able to build dynamic skill ontologies and do mapping and personalized learning paths. So many organizations got really excited about this new opportunity with the new technology. And so it sort of became incredibly powerful that most organizations said, yes, we're going to go all in on upskilling. We know that there is new technology that our employees need to learn, and we now have the tools to do it.
Yeah,
And
so there's two sides to this, right? And they're converging at the same time. One is we realize that half-life of skills is shrinking fast, and so we need to learn and relearn all the time, right? We understand that. Also, I think people understand that because they know that their relevance is going to arise from them being relevant in the market, and that's not necessarily something that they can rely on others to facilitate. The other side, and you're raising it here, is AI is enabling us to completely rethink the idea of training and personalized and building those paths. How does that work exactly?
yeah, so the technology really is now available that you can buy a piece of technology, you can buy a piece of software that many of the learning systems have today, and a lot of it's ready out of the box. You could literally log in and have skills mapped to job roles. You can buy systems that have this data sort of there and you can get it off the ground. That part, I think, is the part that's really exciting. I think the challenge that I hear when I talk to a lot of organizations and why they still see it as a priority, but they're not totally sure how to make these things stick is that they might have not, while it sounds very exciting that you can buy the technology and you can get a upskilling program off the ground, if the organizations haven't really thought about how are we going to incorporate upskilling into our performance management? How are we going to incorporate upskilling into our individual development plans? How's it going to influence career pathing? How our managers are going to get trained to incorporate training in their hiring plans and internal mobility?
So you're basically saying what's the motivation of people to stop working and go out there to consume learning?
Right.
As
Yes.
long as
And
we're measuring deliverables that are just today's work, right?
and it's cultural, right? It has to be something that individuals, many of these employees are coming to the table and they're saying, I expect that I'm going to be a part of an organization that is going to invest in my learning. And organizations have to meet that requirement by employees that are entering the workforce. But it's not as easy as just flipping the switch and turning on some technology. Upskilling has to become part of the culture. It has to be part of what we believe is how we talk about our employees and their career pathing. It's how we think about internal mobility. It can't just be the thing that sits in the background that everybody else is saying, oh, yeah, we have it. We've checked the box. But
So,
if we
who do
can,
you think owns this? Is it HR? Is it learning and development? Is it the managers? Maybe it's us as individuals.
yeah, and I think that's the other really big challenge that I hear is that the reality is if you were just doing compliance training, yes, of course, maybe HR should own that or operations. But the reality, when you're trying to incorporate these upskilling programs, a lot of them are very role specific. And so you need the business stakeholders all in on learning. They have to be part of this process for their employees to say, I'm going to work with you on your individual develop plans. I'm going to talk to you about your upskilling, and I'm going to support you in a way that's very different because now it's part of our conversation, not the thing you do in the e-learning system like maybe you used to do.
So, why do you think I why isn't that working? Because I'm pretty sure if you ask leaders whether upskilling their organization is important, they'll say yes. Everybody understands that we're not equipped for what we'll need tomorrow and the day after, right? Why isn't it working?
Yeah, the I see a lot of times it's not working because we have so much focus on productivity and efficiency that we actually don't make that time and space for the managers to one take the training to understand what they need to do to be the good managers and stewards of upskilling, but also providing the time and the space for the learners to also embark on those types of learning journeys. We're all under all this immense pressure every day to deliver, to do more, to meet our OKRs, but if we aren't thinking about the 1 hour investment in my learning that's going to deliver me 5% more productivity down the line, if we don't think about it that way, then it's really easy to make it be the time box on our calendar. We say, oh, I'll just skip that today.
Yeah, I think so. You're definitely, I think you've got your kind of the finger on the right thing, right? Because I remember when Amazon CEO kind of announced that they were going all in with AI transformation. And then I wrote about it because in his letter, he basically said, and you guys all need to get, upskilled and it's kind of on you, right? And I
Hmm.
looked at that and I said, that doesn't sound like an organization that's going to succeed because why would people, if they're measured on something, and frankly, you're telling them that you're bringing technology that's going to take their job, why would they be on board? And upskilling's got to be the reason, right? I mean, I can see why an organization can get people to help re- reduce their jobs to maybe even all the way to they don't have any. If a part of the deal is they're going to become skilled in the AI tools that will make them very marketable when they go look for the next job.
Well, and the other thing that I see missing a lot from the conversation is that I think you can still say that you have high expectations of your employees and about productivity and efficiency, and also be talking about that through upskilling because there's real business benefit when you when you look at learning programs. If you start to look at, and let's just say a sales leader, if a sales leader understood or saw the data that their sales team was going to have an 8% higher quota attainment for those that have the highest engagement within their learning, does it now change the conversation to say, I can still be focused on the bottom line and I can still be focused on business and at the same time still empower my team to be able to take the time to do the learning because it's a win win for everybody?
And that, I think that kind of gets us right back to the systems and the technology, right? Because if it used to be learning was a classroom, right? I have to step away from my desk, I go to a classroom, spend a day, and maybe I learned something and maybe I didn't. If you're bringing the learning in a different way and in different kind of on the job and in real time and as I go,
Hmm.
maybe that changes. Maybe that's the solution.
Well, that's how we need it, right? Today, it's not, again, while it would be nice for us to all peel away for the 1 hour on Fridays and go do our learning, we need it in the flow of work. I might be in the process of trying to do data analysis, and I'm trying to do something that I just, in my mind, I know what I think that I want, but the reality is I don't actually know how to do it. I need to be able to go and figure out how to manipulate that Excel file or use that, I don't know, Looker BI tool or whatever it might be. I need to be able to go understand how I can leverage those things in the moment. I don't have time to wait around and go sign up for a course that I'm going to go to 2 months from now. I actually need to do it right now. And so
And
our
so do you
ability
think the tools will know how to bring us just in time knowledge in the workflow?
I think it also, again, too, I kind of go back to the cultural piece, right? Which is the tools allow you to that, yes, you have to have the tools to be able to get your hands on the knowledge that you need. But also culturally, if you think about it was funny, the morning, sorry, not the morning, the when we very first rolled out AI at our organization, I think um there was a lot of people using ChatGPT and not talking about it, right? It was sort of the thing that they said, well, I mean, I know we're supportive of AI, but I don't want to look as if I'm getting free answers, right? We didn't talk about these types of things. And then we made it very much part of who we are. We made it part of what we expect for you to have, tools and capabilities to go find information if you need it. And it was actually embraced. And that in and of itself really opened the door for different types of learning where it's happening automatically. People are going out there regardless of what tools you're using. There are ways to get your hands on knowledge today that most of us know about. At a company and at an organization, you have to make it very much an open and safe space as well for your employees to say, I learned something new and it's okay that I use tools to help me get to this answer.
Yeah, even it should be expected. And that was another thing I noticed in the report that you issued, right? Because upskilling and learning isn't just about classes. It's actually supposed to be a lot more about people, connections, mentoring, peer reviews, everything. And your report shows that over 40% of the companies are saying they don't have any people-based learning. What's going on?
Yeah. I mean, I think the allure of the LMS and what it came with e-learning content was pretty palpable. For many years, we used to have to read through 100-page SOPs and PDFs, and you're trying to understand what you're supposed to do for your job. And so when all of a sudden we said, "Ooh, let's put this into a video, something you can watch, micro learning," that was like, "Oh, this is amazing." Then came the part where the LMS became very cold, right? It became very much this empty space full of content where I'm not engaging with real people. I'm not actually having conversations. And we expected that that would check the box of saying, well, I gave you the course. Did you take the course? You should know this by now. And I think what we're all realizing after so many years of having this at our fingertips is that you still need that human connection to be able to have a discussion about what you learned. You still need to talk, whether that is with your manager, with your peers, with other colleagues, with somebody who it works in an entirely different department that you never talk to on a regular basis. It's important that we have conversations about the knowledge that we have ingested, taken in, but how do we put it into practice? How do we change our behaviors? Where is it useful for us? And that's the part that we feel really important as part of being a contributor to the learning culture of all the organizations we work with is that we can't take away that human element of learning. You can't just provide a system of e-learning content. There also has to be ways in which you facilitate this human interaction as well, especially in this remote world.
So if I'm an HRO or L&D, head of learning, and I'm listening to this, and we try to build systems because it's the way we know how to move the organization and create the safety nets and make sure everybody does that. How would you design a system these days that facilitates learning as a culture?
Yeah, I mean, step one is sort of asking ourselves, like, is our learning strategy, is it really solving a business problem or is it sort of checking a box? And that's a really reflective moment, I think, for a lot of organizations who, in reality, many of them are just checking the box. But if you're really
Why
truly
is that, Leslie? Can you think why that is? Is it because we don't know what we should be teaching for the next couple of years?
I think that the focus on checking the box came from some very specific requirements that have governed what we would call learning and development. And that felt like the bare minimum we had to do while we focus on chasing the deals and being productive and doing the things, right? And it isn't until you understand that and you see again, I go back to the business outcomes. If you see that your engineers are 10% more productive when they have an always on upskilling program that's teaching them new technology and they can actually produce or actually deliver 10% more code than they used to in the same amount of time. Until you can see that the business outcome is actually tied back to the learning, it's too easy to just manually get through the days and try to get them done. And so
Yeah.
it really kind of takes that step back to say, do I believe that learning is a strategy, a differentiator for us against our competition? We are going to use this as a way that we empower our people to actually stay relevant against our competition so that we're still here in 5 to 10 years. And that's a bigger question to ask yourself.
Yeah, it's almost today with I can't imagine anyone not thinking that that's the only way to go. I mean, by definition, there's so much going on, there's so much change, and you take your eyes off the screen for like 5 minutes, and there's 50 new ways to do what you did yesterday, right? There's got to be a way. If there is ever a time for learning organization from a cultural perspective, it's now. And frankly, if you're not doing it, I don't see how you can survive in this, speed of change. So I think what we're seeing is HR not knowing how to turn that into something that actually works. It's almost like we've left it to people's devices to just figure out what tools they need. And what would you have them do differently?
Yeah, we've written a series of what we call the strategic learning playbooks here at Absorb, and we talk a lot in those playbooks. It's more about from the very get-go of why do I need to invest in these different types of learning initiatives? Who are the stakeholders that are involved? What kinds of questions should we be asking? And there's a lot that's in them that talk about the right types of questions to be asking. So if you're going out and you're building a learning initiative that has to do with product and process training, and you need to go out, there are certain types of collaborative efforts that you need in order to sort of get everybody else on board, right? So if I'm leading HR, I can't run product and process training if I'm a technology company without the help and support of my product team, maybe my CS team, maybe my sales team. Those are things that level of collaboration is really important. So the idea of creating things like training councils and groups of people who are all invested in these types of initiatives, because we see the outcome that'll come if we don't only train our employees, but then we take it one step further and say, let's start training our customers and our partners on the same products. If we start to see the business needs that are there, it can't be done all on your own over in HR. We can't expect HR or even learning leaders on their own to know how to build those types of training modules for our employees or our customers without some partnership from
Yeah,
everybody
and I
else.
think that's obvious. I think though they do own facilitating the process. It's like you said, okay, everybody's running forward, delivering on whatever it is they're delivering. And HR's role is to just get them to stop for a second, take a look at this and say, here's something we're not doing for our ability to deliver tomorrow.
Well, and that's actually a really good point, near it. The other side of this that I've seen happen quite a bit in organizations is you just let things go rogue and you have a bunch of different business stakeholders who are creating a lot of different training content. And you realize at some point in time that there does need to be some sort of an oversight into our tone and our brand and who we are as a company. And we can't just have 100% rogue creation of content, because you will end up with, I would say, a very fragmented strategy as it pertains to whatever the sales training or product training, whatever it might be.
Have you seen like a really good example that jumps up to you right now, and maybe even in the AI context of someone who's doing a good job that you can talk about the what makes it such a good job?
I think what I see happening a lot, we just held our Absorbi Awards last week. We flew in about 25 of our top customers. We ran our Absorbi Awards, had about 150 submissions, and we held the awards. We had this gala, and every one of the top 25 customers got on stage and they talked about some of these programs that they had created. And we had lots of different categories. And I think one of the themes that you heard a lot was this concept of sort of evergreen, always on upskilling, right? And so when we think about the idea that um, what what separated these customers from some of the other customers that had submitted some of the submissions was they approached upskilling as something that's very agile, that we can respond to very quickly, something that many business stakeholders were sort of all in. And that many times this was global. This was not something that was done in one particular region by one particular group. It was a company wide initiative where we were all in on learning. And when we think about what our employees need, we did not get constrained with we have to wait to build this class or buy this training or whatever it might be. It was, I see a need in my business. We need to attack that need. We need to make sure employees get the information that they need. And with that, it created a much more agile organization. And so when I hear about these types of programs, I think that was the consistent theme, was the idea that upskilling was an always on mentality.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous because what we're trying to do is get an organization where we could put the right people on the right jobs at the right time with the right skills. And that requires that. So if you could talk to leaders and have them ask their organization for something that has to do with skills and learning that they're not necessarily doing these days, what would that be?
So I think when it comes to the things that when the business is talking to the leaders or within HR and L&D about sort of what they need, I think first and foremost, as we talked about earlier, it's got to be seated in some sort of a business outcome, right?
Yeah.
The while we can talk about the importance of upskilling for our employees and the demands and the expectations from our employees, if it becomes a feel good program, it's going to be very hard for those things to have the sustainability that we want these programs to have, right? So, really talking about and thinking about from the get go, what is my business case or what is my business outcome that I'm trying to drive? Because we all know that that will drive the decisions that our leaders are agreeing to. It has to contribute to that bottom line for us. And it feels a little cold to say that when we're talking about learning initiatives, but the good news is that with these training programs, they absolutely have direct correlations to higher productivity, higher employee retention, better quota attainments, better customer retention. So it's starting there and being able to start to build that business case from the get-go and building the business case in collaboration with your other stakeholders. Again, doing these things in a vacuum and just building it for how you might need it for your particular business. When you start to open up that conversation to other potential stakeholders and you think about who else might be affected, many times you realize that the needs are actually much greater than just what you're experiencing today. And so together you can be stronger and build the stronger business case to your
Yeah,
leaders.
and when you say stakeholders, you even talk about beyond the company, right? I mean, I'm seeing organizations these days, especially the ones who are delivering AI value and infrastructure, worried about training their customers' people to use it and measuring, usage. So suddenly training has gone kind of beyond my own organization and people.
Absolutely. I would say about half of our customers are already training customers and partners, members, suppliers,
Yeah.
lots of different types of programs where it's just as business critical to ensure that it's not just our employees that are getting what they need, but anybody that's part of our ecosystem that makes us a powerhouse of a company. It's everybody that is going to need that access to that type of information. And the beauty of that actually is that many times when you're creating it for your employees, it's a remix of that content for your customers and your partners and suppliers. There's maybe a different tone and angle that you might be giving to your customers and partners. But actually, once you've done it for your employees, a lot of it can actually be reused. And it's a much easier lift to start to then get that increased ROI and value from what you've already done when you think about those other groups.
So when you think a couple years down the road, we used to say, I used to say 5, 10 years, but I don't think that's possible these days anymore.
3 years
Um,
feels like a long time at this point.
yeah. So when you think a couple years down the road and you try to envision where this is going, what, you know, learning, training, upskilling can look like for us, what do you see?
Yeah. When we think about where we're going in the next few years, I think there's going to be a lot of changes as we think about our how we interact with both knowledge consumption, but also with the people that we work with. So if we think about things like if we just separate knowledge consumption, I think we're all seeing nowadays that that is actually becoming easier and easier. There's a lot of technology out there to get that knowledge consumption. what we talked about earlier about the ability to have it come to me and it be supported by my organization as I need it in that moment
Yeah.
becomes the really important piece, right? Because otherwise you end up with people kind of going rogue and getting whatever information that they want and kind of going from there. There are parts of that knowledge that really need to be governed by your organization so that we are getting the right information to our employees at the right time. What I see being very different is I don't actually think that people are going to go to all these different systems to be able to go here to go find this piece of information, here to go this. Our job as an organization is to start to think about how we get that learning and that knowledge in the place where our employees need it, regardless of sort of where they are throughout their day. And then the other big piece that I see is that if we continue down the rabbit hole of, okay, all I need to do is give you knowledge. Many ways, like we did before with e-learning content, it's going to become very cold for a lot of people. It'll feel very, even more disconnected than we have become over the last 5 years. And so, even more striking is the ability for us to create that human connection at work, our abilities to be able to facilitate programs, whether those are mentorship programs, colleague connect type programs, coffee chats, in person events. Uh, Conversations and safe conversations to have about problems that you're working through that are not just between you and your manager, but for other people and other SMEs within your organization, it's going to become incredibly important that that still is a part of what you are delivering for our 40-day or 40-hour work weeks when we show up. We're going to need that from our organizations. And it's the reason why we stay. It's many times you talk to people about why they stay at organizations. The first thing that they say, it's because of the people that I work with. It's because of the
Yeah.
conversations we have. It's because I've learned so much. And to me, that part is not going away, even in 5 to 10 years, let alone three.
Yeah, I agree, but I think I'd take it a step further and say I think there's an element that makes that shifts knowledge from being kind of an off the shelf kind of knowledge to something that's practical and you understand it in your context. When to do that, you actually need to talk to people. And I'm reminded a lot of the changes that we see in schools and academics, right? I mean, we say, okay, I don't need the professor to stand at the board and impart knowledge. I have other ways. Well, what do I need them for, right? It's an interesting question. Part of it has to do with the kinds of conversation I can't do with the books.
Right.
Although some people might say, as tools evolve, I'm going to be able to have these conversations with the tools. So, but still, I think that's the nuances of the human element that makes your organization you and unique to you that you'd need to build into a knowledge system.
And those are those moments that we all remember, right? We talk a lot about, tell me about a time where you felt like you really learned a lot. Tell me about a time where you felt like you really grew in your career. 99% of the time, we go back to a moment where we had a conversation with a human being who either saw something in us, helped us through a problem. We bring it back to those moments because that's is what we remember, but it's what we feel in those moments. It's what sticks out to us. It's not always the course that you took where you learned to do Java. It was the celebration when somebody else gave you the high five because you learned Java.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so here's a question I always use it kind of we wrap up is what do you think is the one question we should all be asking ourselves about the future of work?
I think that whether we are staying within our organizations that we are at today, or whether we are thinking about a new organization that we want to join, to me, the number one question that you should be asking is what is their learning strategy? Because to me, when I think about what's going to make me successful in the organization, when I think about anybody that's on my team about how they're going to be successful, it comes down to what is the organization going to do to invest in me and the way that I'm going to grow? Am I here just as a number within the organization and I'm here to do a job and check in and check out? Or am I here because they are going to help me grow in my career and learn new skills, whether I stay here or not? It is something that it's not, and I would say it's not even just me, it's even more prevalent when you think about sort of Gen Z and where they're coming into the workforce. That is very much the expectations. Millennials wanted to know a lot more about corporate responsibility and programs that they were running there. Gen Z is coming in saying, how are you going to help me grow? I'm not looking for a title. I'm not looking to become the CEO. I want to learn something new and I want to feel valued and I want to be here as part of doing something at the organization. And so I think that that is a lesson that we can all take from Gen Z, that they are on the right track, that we should be asking those questions regardless of where we are in our career, because it's important for us. This is where we spend a lot of our time, is at work. And we want to be able to continue to grow and do better in our roles.
Yeah, and we circled right back to skills are the new currency. I call that part of the motivational paycheck. There's some very clear elements that we see today, and I work with managers on those usually because managers control them, that are just as much, if not more, responsible for hiring and retaining than just pay and benefits, or the standard pay and benefits. And number 1 or 2 on that list is definitely training. Thank you, Leslie, for joining me today. For more about Leslie Kelley and Absorb Software, check out the links in the podcast description. You'll also find a link to Absorb's report, The State of the Upskilling 2025. Thank you for joining the Future of Less Work today. And remember, your best people do not work because they have to. They're not working because you tell them to or you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because by working for you, they're also doing what's important for them in life. Till next time.